morning, everyone. Welcome to another webinar by WOU. This one is titled Introduction to Design Thinking, organized by WOU's School of Digital Technology in collaboration with Magic. Before we start, let's go through some housekeeping rules. Today's webinar is being recorded. You are welcome to check out the video on the WOU website once it's been edited. All participants' mics are muted to enable the speakers to present without interruptions. We invite your comments and questions. Please look at the Q&A chat box on your screen. If you think of a question for the speaker at any point, just type it in there and the moderator will pose it to our speaker at the Q&A portion of the event. At this time, I'm going to hand the floor over to our webinar's moderator, Dr. Andrew Tan from the WOU's School of Digital Technology. Dr. Tan, the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Thanks. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Andrew, who is the Senior Lecturer from the School of Digital Technology. Before we start the talk today, I'd like to take this opportunity to give you all a brief introduction about the School of Digital Technology, or we call it as DIGIT. Basically, DIGIT offers a wide spectrum of programs in the field of technology. The programs cover multiple disciplines, ranging from business to computing technology to the creative industry. So far, we have two programs which are Bachelor of Digital Business and Bachelor of Software Engineering. Both of programs are emphasizing work-based learning and connect theories with real-life applications. So let's spend a few minutes to watch the short video clips about the two programs. Elaine, please play the video. So as you can see, this is the digital business.
In the first year, we will teach you about social media marketing. In this module, we guide you to create your own marketing campaign in Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, YouTube, Twitter, and Pinterest. You will also learn how to create your e-commerce website with Shopify. In this module, you will be exposed to the skills to manage your e-store, dropship with Oberlo, and integrate your social media marketing to promote your store. You will also be exposed to Google products, like how to set up your Google Ads, incorporating Google Analytics into your website, and doing on-page and off-page SEO to boost your website visibility in Google search engine. In the second year, you will start your apprenticeship program and be attached to one of our corporate partners to work as a full-time employee while taking part-time lessons. Some of interesting courses that you will learn include business analytics. You will learn how to use Power BI to visualize and get insight from big data. You will learn how to automate and streamline your work processes using Microsoft Power Automate. You will be able to automate time-consuming manual tasks with AI capabilities, giving you more time to focus on strategic, high-value opportunities. You will also learn how to manage and work effectively in a global virtual team. You will use Microsoft Teams to manage meetings, conferences, events, and create interactive conversational bots. In the final year, you will be doing your Capstone Project. In this Capstone Project, you will apply the knowledge and skills of creating a digital business plan. You will be able to validate your business plans through various stakeholders, including customers, suppliers, investors. Along with the business plan, you will be validating your minimum viable products and creating a sales deck for your products.
In first year, we are going to teach you about programming foundations. You will develop Java command line application by adopting software design techniques, unit testing from Junit framework, and able to see a web developer. You will also learn how to create your web development using platforms. In this module, you will learn and apply the tools and techniques required for the data-driven dynamic web application and able to become a full-stack web developer. You will also be exposed to Google products such as Google Ads, Facebook, and email content marketing. Besides, you will also learn how to analyze data and to promote the products through a persona-based campaign to boost your sales in an e-commerce platform. In the second year, you will start your apprenticeship program and be attached to one of our corporate partners to work as an intern while taking part-time lessons. Some of the more interesting courses that you will learn include apps development. You will learn how to develop small to medium-sized enterprise applications using the Spring Framework, React, Cloud Platform, and LifeRay portals. In addition, you will obtain the skills to create competitive digital marketing ideas based on actionable customer insights by integrating applications from digital platforms. Furthermore, you will learn how to protect your system or application from cyber attack. In the final year, you will be doing your Capstone Project. In this Capstone Project, you will apply the knowledge and skills of developing a system based on the knowledge and skills that you learned from year 1 to year 3. In addition, you will be able to learn some specialization courses, such as Data and AI Essentials, Statistics for Data Science and AI, R programming, Machine Learning, Deep Learning, and Reinforcement Learning, which are skills that are needed in Industrial Revolution 4.0.
Okay, thanks, Elaine. Well, this is the first event by our school, which jointly organized by Magic. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, who is going to talk to us about Introduction to Design Thinking. So, what is design thinking and why it's so popular and effective? Besides, have you all wondered how big brands get to be so successful? Some of the world's leading brands, such as Apple, Google, Samsung, and many other great companies have rapidly adopted the design thinking approach. And design thinking is being taught at leading universities around the world. For your information, design thinking is not exclusive for designers. All great innovators in literature, art, music, science, engineering, and business have practiced it. The work processes in design help us systematically extract, teach, learn, and apply human-centered techniques to solve problems creatively and innovatively. And that's what makes design thinking so special. So let us invite our speaker today, who is Syafie, or known as Fee. He is a polymath entrepreneur who majored in teaching English as a second language. He learned most of his programming skills on his own and overcame his stuttering speech challenge back during his degree by joining debates, public speaking sessions, and theater performances. Fee believed you can learn anything from the internet on your own. Upon working in Magic, he was tasked with researching and learning on trends of global and regional industries. Using those trends, he used stories to convey strong and meaningful conversation to make great impacts on our future. He also worked on the public relations and editorial content for Magic to maintain its brand success. In his latest role in Magic, Fee is the senior UI or UX designer who works with various stakeholders to ensure their products and services are humanized and impactful. So let's welcome Fee. Okay, so Fee, now I pass to you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Andrew. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to everyone. Happy Saturday. So in this session, let me just share my screen first. We're gonna just do this, lay back. You guys just, go and get some things to drink, or if you haven't had your breakfast, just go and get something and eat in front of the presentation. It's fine. I think there's a lot of introduction has been done by Dr. Andrew. So I think I don't have to actually explain much about myself. I think he actually opened up a lot about myself to you guys. So I'm a senior UI UX designer. So UI UX stands for user interface and user experience. In the past, I've worked with big companies like Maybank, IBM, to actually work on databases and whatnot. I also founded 5 companies. Most of them, I would say, like, it's a very eye-opening experience. Now in Magic itself, now I actually have like, this is my 4th role in Magic, and all of this work life, in my work life, I all of them have one thing in common. I deal with a lot of users, and in design thinking, these users, they have expectations and they have needs. So to actually just jump into it, right? Let's just talk about design first. So when we talk about design, a lot of people straight away thought about things that is very aesthetic, right? Macam logo, posters, and things like that. But the thing is, design is not just how what makes things pretty, but it's also how things work, right? Now let's just take a moment on looking back at what are the things that you do not really.
Sorry, Fee.
Yeah?
Sorry to interrupt. I think we can't see your screen.
Oh,
Is it my side or other people's side?
hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah, the screen is.
Yeah. It's still stated that screen sharing. Yeah, right now it's okay. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So, okay. All right. So do you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So where was I just now? Okay. So the thing about design thinking is that it's not just what makes things pretty, right? But it's also design is how things work. So you take a look at how the things around you are being designed. My very good example of design is the bus stops, right? If you take a look at how the bus stop is being designed, they often designed by people who are not using bus stops, right? So the people who are commuting to work or to from point A to point B, they tend to actually face things like heat from the sun, glare from I would say from lights and things like that. And even if rain, if it's a heavy downpour, people get splashed and wet and things like that. So that's a very good example of design. So when we talk about design thinking helps you to actually be very user-centered. So when you actually talk about design thinking, so these are the 5 processes, right? So empathize, define, you ideate, you prototype, and then you test it out. In terms of breaking it down, if you are possible to actually do this, you should do this in a 5-day span, right? The first day you should be empathizing. The second day you should define. The third day you should ideate, and the 4th day you prototype, and then lastly you test. And then you repeat that process again, just like I would say like this, right? So that see the arrows and whatnot. So let's just deep dive into day 1, right? Empathize. So I like to share this quote. You can only understand people if you feel them in yourself. So John Steinbeck. That's because of when you design something, doesn't necessarily you should expect how your user is going to actually use the things that you design as accordingly, right? So this is a great example of how design doesn't relate to experience. So when you actually do an UI, the users would actually experience it differently. They would actually find the easiest way for their needs. They would probably cheat things around. They would probably like butcher your design. And then when you go back and then you realize, that's not how I design it, right? So, and you could actually even break it down even further in terms of what is their goals, what is that users need and frustrations and what makes that users happy. So in terms of empathizing, you basically go through like day one, right? Oh, wait, hold on. Is it pause? Yeah.
No, go. Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
we can see that. Yeah.
So in terms of day one, right? When you talk about empathy, you need to actually appreciate them as a human being, right? You communicate them your understanding. You basically parrot back what you think or what you feel the users are going through. And you see their world through their eyes, right? You understand their emotions through their day-to-day life, right? Because the thing is, problems are solutions undiscovered. So when you actually want to take a look at that, so this is where day two comes in. You start define these problems. So when you actually want to define things, you basically map this out based on what they say, what they did, what they think about, and what they felt. Because the thing is, sometimes when somebody is doing something, they're thinking something else. And sometimes when they think about something else, they feel something else. And then they say something else as well. And those are insights that you could actually get into point of views, because that would actually open up a lot of definitions in terms of problem statements, their frustrations. You could actually see, their point of view from the most extreme happiness to the extreme frustrations. So then you actually break it down into those problem statements into how might we, right? So how might we is basically you trying to actually change your point of view of looking at the problem into a question that would actually help your brain to think positively, right? To start looking at solutions. And that would actually be in this format. How might we action for the users so that impact? So let's do a quick, let's do a quick exercise. Take an example of something. If I were to actually say, I give you a problem, and how do I make teenagers wake up in the morning every day? So if I were to actually break that, how might we encourage early wake up for teenagers so that they could actually be more productive on a day-to-day basis? So you break it down at that point when I actually gave you that how might we, you start thinking of solutions, right? And that is the beauty of this how might we format. So from there, you would actually start looking at ideation, right? In terms of ideation, there's several things that you could actually do. You could actually brainstorm. You could actually do post-it votings. You could actually break it down into 4 categories of methods. The most rational, the most delightful, the most darling, the most long shot. And then you could actually make it either the prototype as a physical prototype, or is it a digital prototype, or is it experience prototype? So it's like an end-to-end thing. So from there, you could actually break it down into 2, right? Low fidelity prototype, high fidelity prototype. So low fidelity is mostly on paper, right? You don't spend too much time. So there's pros and cons of creating prototypes. So from when you break it down into prototypes, I would recommend, if you have time to actually do a high fidelity prototype, you would actually gain more insight, because the moment when you go into the last phase, which is the testing part, you have to actually give the real persona, the real users of what they have to do, things like that. And then either you do it by guided ones, meaning you give them a set of actions if you want to test them out, or you basically sit them down and then you run through the prototypes with them and get their feedback. So the reason why we do this is because if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original, right? Sir Kent Robinson said that. So in terms of why we do this is because of we want to find the desirability of something, and compare it with the viability of your businesses, and also whether or not is it feasible. Do you have enough things that you could actually come up with from that point? So it's basically that is the introduction to design thinking. I know it's quite fast, right? But I like to actually open up questions Q&A, because for you to actually understand design thinking, you have to actually be as curious as possible. And then you actually should ask a lot of questions in terms of how do we actually empathize with people, right? So in terms of being empathetic, it actually takes a lot of effort, because we tend to actually be our empathy actually only extend to the line of sight, meaning that if you don't see it, you don't really remember about it. And how do you actually build up this empathy? Is you have conversations, and it's not user interviews, right? If you're familiar with user interviews or user feedback, it's more or less you sitting one-on-one to actually understand what that person's going through on their day-to-day basis. And you can even do it as a group, make it more fun by role playing. At that point, you can actually start defining a lot of things. And then from that definition of problem statements, you turn it into how might be's. And from that how might be's, you can start coming up with various prototypes, right? Various ideas. And then you don't stop with the first 5. You keep on building it up more and more and more. So for you to actually find a very good prototype is that you basically base on the, what do you call that? This part, right? Based on the 4 categories, right? The most rational, based on desirability, feasibility, and desirability, viability, and feasibility. So whether or not it's the most rational one, is the most delightful one, is it the darling of your group, or is it a long shot, meaning that you don't have enough budget to do it and whatnot. So once you actually finish the ideation, you have to actually go and test it out, right? Once you actually done the prototype and whatnot. So once you actually manage to actually be familiar with this, like I'm fortunate enough to actually run design thinking for the past 2 years, a lot with my colleagues, with other parties outside. Once you actually understand the core of design thinking, you can actually break down in terms of the duration, right? Instead of spending 5 days, you could actually have a whole 1 day to get things through by making it your own, right? This is a module called Soul Searching module, where you actually mapped out a lot of things. I think I've done this with Wawasan Open University, with their Center of Online Learning, and they've gone through this process from a design thinking perspective. And then they start making decisions on what to prioritize in terms of what their day-to-day operations. So that's where design thinking falls into place, right? So I guess I would like to actually just have some conversation with the audience, right? Do you have any questions so far?
Hi, Fee. Yes, definitely. We have several questions. Okay, so one of our audience, Daniel, would like to ask: design thinking is one of the approach to creativity solve problems. So the question is,
yes.
Is it this?
Yeah. So the thing is that if you look at how we actually, if we don't take into consideration of design thinking, the way that most people actually do their problem solving is coming up with assumptions that is not validated. So design thinking helps validate those assumptions. So through feasibilities, desirabilities, and viabilities. So you would actually, whatever that you come up with will be for the users, not based on what is the KPI, what is the bottom line of the day. So I hope that answers your question.
Fee, is it possible that can you give one case study or one scenario that you've done before to share with us, like what you mentioned just now, like the problems, how from the problems, how we can convert it to like a design thinking and to solve it?
Oh, I can. Hold on, yeah. So let me open up Figma. And So the thing is, I use Figma to actually prototype a lot of things with my colleague. So the way that we actually do a case study, right? Okay, so while we wait, let's just go through other questions.
Okay, the next question I have is from King Chong, that he would like you to share what of the UI UX or front-end development tools that you would recommend for high fidelity prototype.
High fidelity prototype. Okay,
Yeah.
so I use Figma. Let me share my entire screen if it's possible. Hold on, let me stop sharing first. So I use Figma to actually prototype a lot of things, right? So before I actually prototype, I would actually do I would say that sprint planning or design thinking process. So in terms of design thinking process, let me show you. I use Miro. It's basically an online whiteboard where we could actually start doing a remote design thinking process.
Fee, are you sharing something or?
Hold on, let me
Yeah.
switch to
Sure, no problem.
yeah. So the thing is, I did not okay, hold on, let me use WOU's example.
Yeah.
So when we actually do design thinking with WOU, so WOU, they wanted to actually let me find, still loading. Okay. So let me share. Okay. So this is how we work design thinking process with WOU. So we work with the Center of Online Learning that is in charge of their MOOC platform, right? They basically compiled all their online courses into a singular place. So they wanted to actually understand their users, and also they want to come up with what are the things that on a day-to-day basis that they should prioritize for. So they basically just go through the soul searching part first, right? So that they can actually identify their audience mostly, and they want to see actually how does the platform will actually grow from their management side, and how do actually they design the content in terms of language. So this is a very good example that they come up with a lot of comparisons with their competitors, what are their goals that they want to actually do. So I don't want to zoom in too much because, you know, to give some, I would say, confidentiality with them. So from there, they can actually even, once they actually, you know, decide what they want to concentrate on, they can actually start doing sprints, right? On 2-week basis, and then they start refreshing things back, going through the same process again and again. And then they could actually even go through this, what I would say, customer journey, right? So what is the end goal of that platform, so to say, right?
So Fee, can I say that Miro, is it, we call it as Miro? Miro is a tool is it a standard template that they can follow the template so that then the audience able to continue by themselves, or how?
Yeah, they can actually, because the thing is, Miro has a lot of community templates. Same goes as Figma. So I use Figma to actually design the I would say the landing page and whatnot, and the user flow of things. So in terms of recommendation of, I saw Ken Chung actually shared, asked what kind of the front end development tools. So I use a lot of on Figma. So in Magic, we use Figma extensively. So in Magic, we only have like several designers. So we work across marketing team, we work across with the program owners, and then the content developers and things like that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Fee. So we also have a few questions over here as well, like from Afiq, that asks about how to define the problem statement and the pain point of the users. So like how to define a problem statement, like a lot of the audience, maybe they're also confused as well, like how we know that this is how to write a proper define, come out, a statement say that this is the problem. Yeah, can you share with us?
I think in terms of design, I mean, in terms of how to define, like how, from my experience, we do a lot of user conversations. From those user conversations, we take point on their facial expressions, you know, we take note on, I have to actually give out some credits in terms of how do you actually do design, right? I mean, to actually define. So you take a pen, you know, when people are doing user interviews, they tend to actually get like a piece of paper in one hand and then a pencil in one hand. And then when they're actually asking questions, they tend to write it down, not having that connections. So the thing is, empathy plays a lot of role in defining people's problems, because if you are at the other end and being asked those questions, you feel quite distant from the researcher, right? So how I would do it is mostly I would record the sessions with their permission, and then we just have some conversation about the topic. Let's just say, okay, I'm trying to think of an example. Okay, commuting to work, right? So in terms of commuting to work, I would actually say, so how do you commute to work, right? And then you have that eye contact, and then you listen to key points to in terms of what are the methods, you naik basikal ke, drive kereta ke, and then look at the facial expression every time when they actually giving out their feedback, and then catch that and actually say that, oh, I think I see that you look like you're frustrated when you actually answer that question. Could you elaborate what makes you feel frustration? Am I feeling you right? So you basically have that steady conversation. You connect with the users in order for you to actually define what really makes them tick, you know? Because sometimes if you are distant yourself, if you are too formal in your user research, they tend to actually even keep themselves distant. They won't give you the true information. So when you want to define, also you take into keywords, right? What they say specifically. And from those keywords that you start breaking it down into, you pivot that keywords, those problem statements into how might we's, right? So from how might we's, then you come up into that solution thinking mode, I would say.
I see. Great, Fee. Okay, we also have some questions directly from our Facebook. Okay, they would like to know from the audience, like, how can you maybe that to link each of the dimensions of the service quality with each of the dimension of brand equity?
Oh, that's a lot. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, definitely. So means that, okay, let me directly, okay, this is what the audience asked. Can I link each of the dimensions of service quality with each of the dimensions of brand equity? Then how?
Okay. So I think you have to actually work with your comms teams if you have one, and make sure that your prototype is actually aligned with your brand guidelines if you have brand guidelines. So if you don't have all those brand guidelines and whatnot, in terms of, because at the end of the day, your users is the most important stakeholders, right? If there's no point of designing things that your users will not use, or even like you basically pivot your design to the point where they do not want to use it anymore, and that's dangerous. So I would say that brand equity, if you call it, it's mostly how it makes people feel about your organization. So watch out for that. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, the same person as well, they asked on the service quality to brand equity in tourism. The audience maybe is from the tourism sector. That's why they want to know a little bit. What should the moderating variables be? Could it be cultural factors, or how about the mediating variables? Can it be perceived value from tourists based on their satisfaction level?
Oh,
so I believe that this audience is from the industry, from the tourism player. So maybe that.
I understand. Yeah. Right now, because of the pandemic,
exactly,
the tourism are also, affected. Let me try to understand that question first, right? So Dr. Andrew, he said that something about how does the user
okay, maybe let me repeat again. Okay, okay, on service quality to brand equity in tourism, what should the moderating variables be?
Moderating variables. Okay, so I have a question in terms of what do you mean by moderating variables? Is that KPI? Is that your bottom line? Is that profit?
So far, okay. No, he never stated over here.
Okay, so let me just, I think, assume that that's basically your KPI, right? You want to actually gain profit, you don't want to lose money, and you want to actually equate to satisfaction, right? Now, the thing is, if the user is already like have high satisfaction and their user experience of going through, let's say, your hospitality service, from the moment they actually landed at the airport, if your hotel actually provide pickups from the airports to your hotels, to your area, and then until to the point where they check out, and then you send them back to the airport. Throughout that, in terms of moderating variables, in terms of KPI, all you need to do is just basically make sure that you take note of the average and the most common frustrations. The moment when you actually identify that, you can start improving on top of your already good services, right? To make from good to great. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, or maybe I can reshape a little bit like what Fee mentioned. Is it like, okay, based on the facial expression from the customer or the tourist, for example, like for example, you bring them to go to a place, then after that, maybe they show some facial expression dislike. So maybe that this will become the problem. Then, and after that, based on the design thinking, we can, based on this problem, then we can come up with a solution on this. Can I say in this way?
Yeah, can. So the thing is, when you actually done a very good design thinking process, you can actually start visualizing your whole customer journey map from the start to finish. And from those point forms, so if you see this dotted, those are touch points that in your business or in your service that they are actually interacting with your company or with your product or with your service. And then you can actually even break it down into, satisfaction, usable, whether or not it's usable. So usable is basically they don't have any emotions about it. They don't have any frustration about it, not even satisfaction. So it's just basically bare minimum. So in terms of bare minimum, you want them to actually get those satisfaction up. But if it's actually leaning towards frustration, those are the things that you should actually take a look back, right? Yeah, and then you could actually even break it down at those touch points who are responsible, like for example, I'm taking an example of just now, from when a tourist landed to your hotel, right? They landed at the airport. The first touch point is the driver, right? Or basically the bellboy. So that person is basically the first touch point of your brand, right? So what does your brand guideline say? What is the SOP? If you want to actually go very admin there, what is the things that make most tourists of your company, most customers of your company that actually happy the moment they landed, So, and then you could also take into other consideration research of, you start going into big data or like data in general. You start looking in terms, okay, throughout 1 year, last year, how many customers from this country, how many from that country, and then break it down into culture. So from those culture, even every different culture has different ways of actually, dealing things, right? How thumbs up means different in other countries, things like that. So in terms of satisfaction, to actually make hospitality industry outstanding, different than other brands, is that actually.
Okay, great. Okay, so one of the audience would like to know that, do you mind to share what is the simplest form of design thinking, example, and the end product?
The end product. Okay,
yeah.
So okay, so an end product, I would say, let me show you my current work in progress. So in terms of the simplest way of doing design thinking is basically these are the one that Magic actually I would say pulled from the communities, because it's the nearest to design thinking, right? So soul searching modules and the lightning decision module, and these two modules, they actually only take a full day. The first half of the day, you take a moment to actually understand your users. And the second half of the day is basically you decide what push you forward and what's holding you back. And what is the actions that you need to do based on, the highest impact, but the lowest effort, so that you don't actually, burn out or overextending your capacity as a team. So in terms of examples of prototype, let me stop sharing and let me share my prototype. Hold on, yeah. All right. So before I share my screen, I'm going to give you some example. So if you're familiar with Magic, so Magic, we work with a lot of stakeholders, being a government agency, that we work with corporates, with startups, but our main priority is to the startup ecosystem, right? So we also have investors and whatnot. So we were thinking of how might we connect startups and corporates, as well as with investors, to collaborate on each other so that they could actually accelerate innovation. So that is our how might we, right? So when we actually prototype and start coming up with design, we actually come up with a mix of existing platforms out there. So if you're familiar with Pitch In, you're familiar with Indiegogo, Indiegogo and things like those platforms. Basically, they crowdsource solutions and whatnot. And then people can actually like, okay, I want to actually pledge my support, 10 ringgit or 100 ringgit. And then you would get that, being the first user to actually use those innovation. So that is what we try to come up in this design challenge. So we come up with, okay, a startup is looking for corporates, for resources, partnerships. Now, the reason why they want to actually do this is because they want to help aging citizens to be more active through skilled internship. So they are looking into corporates and organizations who are willing to explore hiring aging citizens in a bespoke internship program managed by Active 60. This is just a content example, yeah. That is not it's a design proposal. So just take it with a pinch of salt. So that is from a startup point of view. So they're looking for corporates. And then we go into Nestle, right? So Nestle is, and also as an example, for legal reasons, I use their name. These are basically, I'm sharing with you guys an internal doc but give us some feedback if you can, does it look good? Does it make sense? Because those, as a designer, feedback is basically my Bible and my Quran, right? So you need to get feedback, because if not, you will be in that echo chamber. So in terms of Nestle being a corporation, they might have an underlying corporate roadblock that they have, right? They might have an internal, I would say, challenge that they want to actually get the startups to contribute. So they're actually looking for, this is an example, Nestle is seeking startups for solutions, ideas, and partnership, because Nestle wanted to actually create the first ever experiential space for wellness and goodness. We are searching for the best ideas or solutions for healthy eating platform or place where orders based on healthy eating preference. So this is just as we go through, to explain more about the platforms, and then even more detail about the platforms, legally secure by design. So even design, right? You also take a look at content, right? Because service doesn't work without content. So hiring a content designer from the get-go, when you start prototyping, would actually create high fidelity prototypes, meaning that you would be able to explain about a platform like I'm currently doing right now, because the content is already there, So this is basically just trust factor and FAQs. So if I will go to the next page, right? If I browse challenge, so this is the challenge page, right? Same content from the front page. And then if somebody would actually want to actually break it down, so this is the project page, the challenge page, the even more detailed, right? So you see here on the right side, we're taking into consideration of design that is already well known out there. So things that is already being accepted. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, I would say. Just take what is already being done out there and reiterate and improve it based on your brand, based on your users' need, right? In terms of our platform on this, the users' need is either from the startups or from the corporates, right? And then the tertiary users would be the public or the investors. So if you look at that, would reflect on the right side in terms of accept challenge for corporates. And then downward, there are a secondary button that is not very highlighted, but pledge support for those who wanted to give out mentorship or legal, or giving up equity investment or debt investment. So even if they go through, right, if, to actually get those people on the fence, more details about that startup. So this is an example of how we do things, prototypes in Magic, right? And we don't just do this internally, right? We work with government agencies, we work with Jabatan Pendaftaran Negara. My predecessors back then, she worked with I think Jabatan Kerja Raya, with Jabatan Pendaftaran Negara, and also Bomba. And most of this are looking at service as a whole, right? I'm taking example of Jabatan Pendaftaran Negara. Back then, there's no such thing as a drive-through pickup ICs or passports, right? Or immigration. But now, if you go to Putrajaya, which only exists in Putrajaya right, at the moment, that you go through their process, that find a and GPN's whole customer journey is that they look the intent, the moment that person wanted to actually do something at GPN, they look at it straight away, meaning that they get into a car, they get into a bus. Those are the things that they can't control. But the moment they reach, for example, Putrajaya, is there enough parking space? Is there enough spots for them? Where do they actually disembark if they took the public transport? And they took consideration from that point on, because those are processes that would actually build up the user's experience, because you don't want, by the time they reach to your office, they got frustrated, that is not even your control. So they took into consideration of the things that they can control. So they look at, okay, how do we actually manage this time? And then they look in terms of accessibilities of what if people are blind? What are people colorblind? What if people are in a wheelchair? Is our building very friendly to those kind of people? So my predecessors actually made a very good case study in terms of making sure that Jabatan Pendaftaran Negara, being a public service, always look at being extremely accessible to Malaysian citizens, and also hopefully from international expats and foreigners as well. So I hope that answers your question. I mean, actually expand quite a lot, right?
Yeah, thanks, Fee, for the case study as well. Yeah, there's one audience would like to know that how to choose the main persona or target to build the product. If, okay, there's an if over here. If they has a broad set of target audience.
Vibrant audience. So okay, I'm going to take an example of Magic, right? We have an extensive stakeholders or users, right? And then we have a dedicated team to actually manage these various stakeholders. We have from social innovators, social enterprise to startups, and then to the point where a lot of people say that, Magic, are you sure that you want to do all this? Because, but then we look at our core of why Magic exists is because we want to actually be the ecosystem connectors or ecosystem enablers. Because in the ecosystem of startups, one party or one stakeholders is a small set of a bigger picture, right? So if you wanna actually drill down in terms of your user personas, that will actually go down back to your bottom line. If you have various stakeholders, what are the top 3 audience? You can only pick 3, and then that is based on the first top audience, the second top audience, and the third top audience. And that would actually influence your decision making down the line, right? When you are talking about making prototypes, making decisions, or making assumptions, does this relate to the top 3 audience? Does this actually take into consideration of our top 3 values, as a brand? So from there, you would be able to actually prioritize. But other things, like Magic, we do have stakeholders, like our first stakeholder is startups, followed by ministries, and then corporates, and then investors, and then regional partners. So those are basically our flow. So the top 3 is basically basic, right? But if you can actually prioritize and put them into, okay, who's our main demographic? And then that would actually align your conversation internally, and also externally.
Okay, great, thanks. Fee, so we have another questions from one of our audience that they would like to know, based on your experience, what is the average time scale used for each part of the design process? We would like to know the time scale based on your experience.
So one thing about what I like about design thinking, and also even like you're doing soul searching modules or lightning decision jam module, is that every part is time frame, right? You do not want to actually have a free flow discussion because that would actually not put everybody in constraint. Now, research has shown that if you put a limited time frame for people to actually discuss or solve, they are more aligned to come up with a lot of good things, productive things, because they are focused. So in terms of average, internally, I would say that Magic would actually put in terms of module, like just now I showed you, right? That 20-year plan. Let me show that part again. So in terms of all these small modules, all of them take in between 15 minutes to 30 minutes, and including discussions and also voting, in terms of the team. So when we actually do this, everybody got so frustrated but they happy, good frustration, I would say, because they are time constrained and they feel like, I need to do this as quickly as I can, put out there post-it notes and whatnot. So when we use Miros and things like that, you could actually see a lot of post-it notes, like just now when I showed WOU. So we take average of 15 to 13 minutes because all of this modules, because we want to end at the end of the day, right? So soul searching and lightning decision module, it takes the whole day. So we need to actually prioritize those time frame, I would say. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thanks, Fee. Fee, this one of the questions is from our students. I believe that because they would like to know, okay, how to apply the design thinking in their learning.
Design thinking in their learning. Wow.
Yes. Yeah, I believe this question directly is from our student, from the student perspective.
Okay. So if I were to actually take design thinking process, right? I would say that if yourself lah, right? If you start with empathy, right? You have to ask the hard question, in terms of whether or not are you being truthful into yourself before you start defining the things that you want to actually evolve, I would say. Design thinking in terms of learning, it would be looking at your experience as a learner, right? Now, on average, human beings can actually concentrate for 30 to 45 minutes. Other than that, your brain started going about doing its own thing. And it's basically mostly tepuk dada tanya selera lah, I would say, because if not, you have to you're not doing yourself justice, before you start defining the problems that you have, and then you want to ideate. When you ideate, mostly as a student, it's mostly about how you go through your life on a day-to-day basis, waking up, what are you going to do next? How do you actually do your notes? And then from there, prototypes would be like, do you do it solely on your iPad or your phone or your notebook? And then from there, you test it out. When you say test it out, if you take that experience of learning process, how often do you use that notebook, and why? If you don't use that notebook, reflect back, so it goes back to that definition, go back into that ideation mode, and go back into that prototype mode. So it goes around and around and around. So design thinking is not one time only. You don't just do it. It's basically like a whole lifestyle. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, good. Okay, thanks. So beside that, we also, there's one audience would like to know that for reading materials, what type of the reading materials that you can recommend? Because so far the audience already read before, don't make me think right now. So they would like to consult you or your advice. What are those reading materials that you can recommend?
Okay, so I have one book. If you want to actually, this is basically the go-to book that you should buy. It's called, hold on, sorry, my cats. I have cats. So, there's this one book from Jake Knapp called Sprint: How to Solve Big Problems and Test New Ideas in Just 5 Days. So let me copy that, and it's a turquoise book. So you would just take a look at that. And the other one that I would actually recommend is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. He's a Nobel-winning author in mathematics. Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. I think I spelled his name correctly, I think. So the other one that I would like to actually also share as well, you could also go through design thinking process by actually going into our DBA platform. It's called Magic Digital Business Academy. You could actually go into ideas and products, brands, communications, marketing and sales and operations, all in one platform. This is in collaboration with the Tech Nation UK and also the University College London Cambridge Judge Business School. And it's aligned with the Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sports. The certs that you get from DBA, it's actually highly sought after in the UK. And we're giving this out for free. Yeah, so it's not a gimmick, you know. So people say that, so because Magic, we're not revenue generated, but we're not profit driven. So we don't have you know, bottom line, you know, profit and things like that. So do check it out, Magic DBA Business Academy. And the second one is Magic Startup Campus. So I would recommend go to Magic Startup Campus first, you know, mymagic.my/campus to check that we gamify all our programs right now. So that when you go through our programs, you get points. And from those points, you can actually start getting those, you know, perks, I would say. So we have a lot of perks for the startups. So just now I saw the video from WOU about building startups and whatnot, right? And then going through that ideation, design thinking. Startup Campus would be an ideal companion membership for you guys. So do check it out. So it's called Startup Campus. And I shared the link already, mymagic.my/campus.
Yeah, thanks, Fee. Definitely, because you also working with Magic, that we hope that we can bring all this to all the Penangites in Penang as well. Yeah. So Fee, last questions from my side that I have. Maybe they want to know that the audience totally understood that the pipeline, that the stages, everything. But they would like to know, how do you move from define phase to ideate or prototype phase based on the problem statement from multiple clients or stakeholders? How do you decide which solution to prototype?
Ooh, how do you move from define phase to ideate prototype phase based on problems from multiple?
Means that move from the define phase to ideate or prototype phase based on the problem statements from multiple clients or the stakeholders.
The thing is, first, when you actually go through that process of design thinking, right? Let me share that. Hold on, yeah. So when you actually go through that process, you want to move from define phase to idea phase on problem statements from multiple clients and stakeholders. So the thing is, it starts from empathy and you need to actually drill down. Like I said just now, like the top 3 audience that you need to. When you are doing the first day, you take a look at where are the overlapping in terms of user research when you do the first day, right? And that would actually start defining that when you go into definition, you start looking at those points, right? Between the users of various users if you have, but I would recommend that you concentrate on 1 or 2 users first. If not, you'll be overloaded. And to actually decide on what prototypes or what ideas to actually move forward to the next phase is you do an internal voting, right? Now, once you have an internal voting, there will be, I would say, there will be a tie, right, between the ideas, right? You probably have like one or two, and mostly probably max out at 3. You would actually have to, I would say, bring in an external force, usually like your product manager or your department lead, to actually be the tiebreaker, right? They would actually say, okay, go with this one to test it out. So it doesn't mean that the previous two or the second one you won't be able to carry forward, right? It's just that you focus on that design thinking process, what one prototype to actually go out and test. Because once you get that validation, that feedback, that insight, if you go back into that definition mode to actually define what went wrong or what went right with that design, with that prototype. So I hope I answered that question. In terms of moving to the next phases, that's where the time constraint, the time limit comes into place. So in terms of day 1, day 2, day 3, it's already maxed out, right? So per day, you take into an operation day is 8 hours. So that whole 8 hours, you basically go through just that process, empathy, define, meaning that you gather as much information as possible. And the thing about design thinking, I forgot to actually point out, is that get the buy-in from your higher ups, because once you started the design process, you can't touch your phone. You're basically being closed off from communication for the whole 5 days. Yeah, and everybody needs to actually, you need to actually send out an email blast. Everybody say that, hey, do not kacau us for the next 5 days. We are doing design thinking. And they will only come out from their cave, I would say, only to gather information, only to gather feedback, right? So there will be moderators in that design thinking. So facilitators, like I am, like, for example, I would be that I would, when I'm doing design thinking process. Now doing remotely, I basically trust the people who are participating. So I hope I basically tell them straight away, this is the ground rules. Do not touch your WhatsApp. Close your WhatsApp tab if you have. Close your Slack. Close your Telegram if you have. Zoom calls and whatnot. Put it aside and concentrate on this first. And that's the most that I could actually do. But if I do it physically, in a hall or in a room, in a empty space, I would actually confiscate their phones actually, and that would actually makes them very uncomfortable. But it helps keep people aligned and focused. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thanks, Fee. Thanks a lot. Yeah, so maybe I will put the last question that I compiled, maybe that just for the last questions already, that just now, because you talk about the digital marketing, then and the UI UX one, yeah, let me scroll up a little bit. Okay, they would like to know that how do graphic designers convert to UI UX designers?
Oh, this is like a career already, right? I would say that you're already on the right path. I would recommend looking at interaction. Hold on, Interaction Design Foundation. I subscribe to that platform as well. It's also where you can actually learn the basic about UI UX and also about service design and also about design thinking. In terms of design thinking specifically, I recommend IDEO. So I'm also certified IDEO in terms of to actually conduct design thinking. So I'm in that process of getting an advanced certification of design thinking. So the thing is, if you want to conduct design thinking internally, it's best for you to get the training first, so that you can actually manage the whole process from end to end. So in terms of making that leap from graphic designers to UI UX, you already have the means to actually convert yourself. So instead of you just doing posters and whatnot, try dipping your hands and designing interface, phone interface, websites, and that you already 1 foot in already. And then you start building up those knowledge base, your own schemata, I would like to say, being an educator myself, your background knowledge on, okay, what design is the most accepted, and color psychology, the F symbol, the F heat map. You know that you always concentrate, and when you actually look at content on the website, you start from the right straight to the left and then go downward and then again, right? We'll receive it after this. That one I asked Dr. Andrew. I mean, I could actually talk to my I would say my team in Magic, but yeah.
Yeah, don't worry, we will sort this thing out, definitely. Okay, thanks, Fee, and thanks, everybody. I believe that Fee already tried his best to answer all the questions that that you all asked. And yes, I already got the answer directly because this is a free webinar, so there's no cert for this one. Sorry for the audience. Okay, so okay, over here, I'd like to say that thanks, everybody, and we hope that to organize more sharing the sessions with the Magic in future, and see you all again. Okay, so Fee, would you like to say like a closing part? I mean, to wrap everything that you would like to before we end for this session.
I would say that it takes a great deal consideration to actually be user-centered, and it doesn't take that much to be more empathetic in our daily lives. The thing is, bad design is extremely memorable, but good design or great design tend to be seamless. Then you tend to overlook because it's already great. You don't really notice about it. So design thinking and being design driven in an organization is mostly user-centered. And that's it from me. And no, do check out Magic Startup Campus.
Sure, no problem. Thanks, Fee. Yeah. Okay, and thanks everybody for this session with you all. Thank you very much. Okay, and thanks for joining our talk today, and please stay tuned for our next event. Okay, and I'd like to say that thank you to our speaker, Fee. To wish that that we successfully organized the webinar, and we have a fruitful sessions with our Fee as well as our excellent speaker. Thanks, Fee. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
Thank you, Dr. Andrew. Thank you, Dr. Lee.